Welcome back to What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm TJ,
And I'm MJ.
and this is your Loki Ghetto Bible Study.
Mm-hmm.
And this time around, we are delving into Ruth, the book of Ruth, not a person.
Yeah, we got this recommended to study next, and we're going to be doing chapter 1 today.
So, this will be the point where we invite you to pause and pray.
Yep.
Okay. And as usual, we split the chapter into 2 chunks.
Okay.
We're going to summarize each chunk. We're going to talk about what stood out to us. And then we'll talk about what was revealed to us about God, or was what we were reminded about who God is. And then we will talk about what is our life application. Because if you were on the Esther journey with us, you would have found out that our goal is transformation. We want our lives to be changed with the Bible study. So, shall we get into it?
Yep.
Okay. So, Esther chapter 1, Ruth chapter 1 has 22 verses. So, I did a roughish kind of split down the middle. Not quite, somewhat. So, our first portion is Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 to 10. So, it starts by giving us some backdrop. So, it tells us that before Israel had a monarchy, they were not quite governed, but led by judges. So these were the people who kept the peace, who maintained law and order.
People like Deborah and Samson.
Yeah.
Was Gideon a judge?
I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, but those kinds of people,
right? And so we're told that during the time where they were being led by the judges, there was a horrible famine. Like, no food to be had. And so we have this man who is from Bethlehem in Judah, Elimelech, who decides, I have a family, I have a wife and 2 sons. Naomi is my wife. My 2 sons are Mahlon and Chilion. We can't survive here in this famine, so we're going to move to Moab. And so that's what they do. And within a relatively short frame of them moving to Moab, Elimelech dies. And Naomi was left with her 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And then the sons get a little older and they marry 2 Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other one named Ruth. And then tragedy strikes again. Within 10 years of them being in Moab, both Mahlon and Chilion die. And Naomi is relatively left alone by herself. And then shortly after this, Naomi gets the news that God has provided food for the Jews and that the famine is over. And so she and her daughters-in-law decide, okay, we're going to go back to Judah. And so they leave their house and they're on the road to Judah. And then she turns to her daughters-in-law and she says, go back to your parents' house. She's like, may God show you the same kindness that you showed to my sons while they were alive and that you've shown to me. And may he basically, she said, may he give you all another husband, give each of you another husband. And so she kissed them goodbye, and then they start to cry. Like, the Bible says that they wailed aloud, which gives you the impression that it was like very loud crying. And they insisted that they would go with her. And she tells, and they insisted that she would go with her. So that's the end. Okay. Verse 10, right? So that's verse 10, right? What were your thoughts? What stood out to you in this section?
I didn't know that the Jews were allowed to leave. I thought, because to me, when they were just they were just leaving the wilderness, there were all these rules about not marrying foreigners, not mingling with them. So furthermore, I didn't expect them to be able to go and live in a foreign place. I didn't know that was like a thing that they could do. So it was interesting. Like, I've read this story so many times, but it was interesting to note that here is a family doing just that. And the intermarrying as well. I didn't know that was like something, like, I'm assuming that they would they would sometimes convert the people around. But they refer to them as Moabite women. I don't know if that's intentional. Orpah and Ruth. I've been calling Orpah Oprah for so long. I've been pronouncing the lady's name wrong the whole time. But yeah. So that surprised me, the fact that we assume Elimelech is a upstanding citizen and Naomi, and so therefore their sons, and it was just a surprise to see them marry foreigners. But one of the visions I read was saying that the Moabites would have been Lot's descendants. I think, yeah.
I think it made mention of where Lot was.
Right. So technically, they're family. And like,
does that make it better?
Yeah. So I guess that makes it a little less complete foreigners. They very likely might have worshipped the same God. Okay. It's possible. Although later on we're not sure. But yeah,
I get what you're saying.
So that was something. Yeah.
Okay. My point was I didn't even focus on the fact that like whether they could move or not. My thing was that migration isn't something that's new. It's just that possibly the reasons for migration might be different now than back then. But listening to you talk about like them going and marrying foreigners, it gave me very big Jacob and his sons moving into Egypt type of situation. Like, that's what it brought back to mind for me. Yeah. So that's what I thought. I think one of the versions I've read talks about that it's within 10 years of them being in Moab that Elimelech and Mahlon and Chilion all die. So within a 10 years period, Naomi loses like all of her immediate family. Like it's just gone. And I was like, whew. Yeah. That's
my point is tragedy continues to show up on Naomi's doorstep.
Yeah, that's rough. However, on the flip side of that, my one of the points I have is that she must have been a wonderful mother and mother-in-law. And I made the distinction because I think her sons did a good job in choosing wives.
Oh, okay.
And I think that is a reflection of who their mother is and maybe the influence she had on their lives and the relationship she had with them. And then I think she was a wonderful mother-in-law. I mean, in modern times, we hear some horror stories about mothers-in-law. And but here we have her daughters-in-law refusing to leave her. Yeah. So I think that speaks
of the relationship.
That's my final point here is like it was so strong that they were willing to go with her to a foreign place rather than go back to their parents' house, which was like I was thinking about it, I was like, I get married, right? Anything happened to my husband, I got married to my parents' house.
Yeah. Straight away.
Like I'm already refusing to leave my parents' house. Right? So far less. So I think that was very telling of the relationship she had with them. Which was very significant.
Yeah, being with Naomi was home.
Yes. Yeah. You have anything on that?
No, not to this section.
Okay. All right. So they're basically crying at this point. Ruth and Orpah are now crying, saying, "We're not going to leave you. We're not going to leave you." And then she tells them, all right, she's like, listen, y'all go home. I am too old to have any sons for y'all to marry at this point. And I was just like, and even if I could get a husband and have a son and get pregnant tonight, it's not fair to ask you to wait for this son to grow up to marry you. Go back to your parents' house. And then she also makes, this is the first point we hear her talking about that God has turned his hand against her. Right? Again, the daughters-in-law start to cry very loudly, but Orpah kisses her goodbye and leaves. But we see Ruth still clinging to her. And so Naomi urges Ruth. I forgot to come with my Bible because I wanted to read Ruth's. I wanted to read like Ruth's famous statements, right? So because she urges Ruth to leave. I found the page number, I think. And Naomi urges Ruth, she's like, look at Orpah. She's going back. And this is what she says. She's going back to her gods and her people. You go with her. And this is the point where Ruth makes her
it's the for such a time as this conversation
Right.
statement for this story.
So she says, "Don't ask me to leave you. I want to go wherever you go and live where you live. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I want to die. May the Lord punish me severely if anything but death separates the two of us." Like, what was Naomi supposed to say after that? Yeah. And that's literally what happened. After this speech, Naomi was like, "Okay, fine, let's go. Let's go. We'll go." And so basically, Naomi realizes she can't change Ruth's mind, so they continue to Bethlehem. And their arrival causes quite a stir. There's excitement, and the women are like, "Can that be Naomi?" And she says, "Do not call me that. Call me Mara, because God has dealt with me bitterly. She went away full and she's come back empty. God has brought misfortune upon her." And so Naomi and Ruth the Moabite arrive in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. That's the end of chapter 1. So, your thoughts. Give me your thoughts.
This is just reminding me. When I was at school, my roommates and I read the story, and I remember them enjoying the Naomi changing her name to Mara. And one of them was like, "You don't call me by my name anymore. From now on, call me Mara."
Yeah. And I think that is something that we have left behind. I think
names having meanings.
Not just names having meanings, but like changing what people call you by. Changing what people call you by based on where you are in life.
Okay.
Because we see that happening with Abraham becoming Abraham. We have Sarai becoming Sarah. We have Jacob becoming Israel. Yeah. So I'm sure it happens. There are other instances throughout the history.
Saul becomes
Paul. Yeah. So I feel like throughout history we have people who don't necessarily, like, I don't know what the legalities at that time were, like if they had to legally change their name, but I think it's interesting to think that based on what you're experiencing in life and based on what your name meant, that you could choose another name to be called by because you no longer think that name is fitting. I would like to change my name, but that's not true. I think for me, again, we see the strength of the bond between Naomi and her daughters-in-law. Mm-hmm. And I guess I don't know that it's necessarily a situation where Ruth was closer to her, or it's just like Ruth was like, "I'm not going back. I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to." She's like, "Did you not see me marry a Jewish man in the first place? I'm not going back to these Moabite men. It's not happening. Like, I want another Jewish husband. Take me with you. Take me with you." I low-key feel that's what's going on with Ruth, but that's just that's just me using my imagination. Oprah might have been like, "Okay, I'll go back to my parents' house. It's okay." Yeah, but I think the strength of her bond and the relationship she's established with her daughters-in-law is telling, is significant, is beautiful.
I just thought of something. I wanted to, just in case anybody had not processed it. Naomi telling them about marrying her future sons is not strange.
It's custom.
It's custom, right? So it was in order to maintain property and inheritance within at least for the minimum a tribe, but hopefully within a family, right? So that the nearest relative of a man who was married, who died, they would marry his widow, and their first child together would be considered the dead man's child.
Okay.
And all of his property would pass down to that child. Son. I believe it's a son. I don't think it's just any child.
Patriarch.
Yeah. Right. So that's what Naomi's referring to when she talks about her getting married and having sons. And I think that comes to play later on in the story. Custom. Yes.
Outside of it's the book of Ruth, but most of my points were about Naomi. Outside of like being a wonderful mother and mother-in-law, I think that Naomi was an independent woman. All right.
Okay.
And hear me out. Why? Right? She's making a journey from one country to another where she has to go and start over because she's lost her husband, she's lost both of her sons. She has no male family figure going with her. And she starts this journey going with her 2 daughters-in-law. So at least she has some company. And she's sending them both back. Wow. So she is ready and willing to make this journey by herself. And she's ready and willing to go start over by herself. Yeah, I was about to say she's a strong Black woman. She's a strong Jewish woman. You know, to me that speaks of a level of independence. Well, I guess it may be dependent on God, but like as an independent woman, she was like, I can do bad all by myself. I can take care of myself. I can do it. I can do it. Yeah. So I was like,
I also think that the way that the Jewish social system was set up, that as a widow, she knew she would be okay.
Yeah. People would look out for her. Yeah. But I wasn't even necessarily thinking about like her not being okay when she got back. I was just thinking about the journey.
Okay. Yeah. Right?
She's a more mature woman traveling by herself. Sis was bold, brave, and bad. She was just like, I can do this.
But something that to me tells of how wonderful a person she was as well is that people are excited when she arrives. I was thinking that she has a very good reputation of being somebody that people enjoy being around.
Yeah. Her return caused a reaction and a stir. Yeah. This is one I had to think a couple of times before and read a couple of times before putting this down. Like, there's no outright mention of Naomi being bitter.
This one that stings me every time. But yes, go ahead.
All right. Like, we don't see her. Like, there's nothing that outright says that she's complaining.
It's not the Job's wife, curse God and die.
Right. Yeah. But she does insist, because she says it repeatedly, that God has dealt bitterly with her. So I think that's an interesting where she feels like this is a bitter situation. That to the point where she's ready to change her name to bitter, but we do not see an outright display of bitterness on her part. Yeah. And it may be just that nobody recalls it. Because I feel like losing both your husband and your 2 sons in 10 years, like, whew.
To be honest, like, every time I read it, it makes me uncomfortable. The fact that she can say, God has dealt bitterly with me. I don't know that modern day Christians feel comfortable saying that. I don't think,
like, put the onus on God.
Yeah, I don't think we say that. We don't say God did this. We say God allowed it to happen. And I think that is a coping mechanism in itself to
But I don't think she's saying that God did it.
Well, in some of the visions, but I think that might have been the language. In some of the visions I read, that's how she says it, that God has I don't know that she says outright that he's killed her sons, but she's holding God responsible for
it. God has brought misfortune upon me. That's one of the visions I read said that. But I think God allowing that kind of thing is just cause to blame him, because he could have stopped it.
He could have stopped it. Yeah, and so. that I think we deliberately don't say that he does those things. And I think that's part of, I guess, our theology, in the sense that we don't believe God does bad things.
We think he just allows it.
But it's interesting. I think that comes down to relationship as well, to be able to have that kind of honest conversation. She's not even having it with God, but about it.
Okay.
Yeah. But it makes me uncomfortable. Like, how dare you say these things about God? Yeah.
You walk in her shoes and you let's have this conversation again. Yeah. I feel like, I personally felt like she was still pleasant about it. Because she could have just very well been like Job's wife, curse God and die. Curse you and die. Yeah, because like we don't see her, like that was my thing. I was like, I don't think I'd ever processed like the time frame in which all of that happened. It's like actually studying this time around. I saw the 10 years and I was like, Bleh. And that one hit me. But my final point is about Ruth, which is fitting because it's her book.
Okay.
I think we see her being loyal and devoted, and I think like I mentioned a while ago, I can't tell you what type of situation or what type of relationship it could possibly take for me to be in a situation where somebody tells me go back to my parents' house and I'm like, nah, I'm coming with you. Like, no. I am no Ruth. I am no Ruth. I'm Orpah. I'm Orpah without the crying. I would have been gone. I would have been gone. Yeah, but that was my takes. Do you have anything else?
I don't know. I feel like this is more relevant as a takeaway.
Okay, all right. Okay, so tell me about your lesson. That's my God.
Okay.
What did you learn about God?
From how she's being treated by the people around her, I believe that Naomi was what we would call it typically a good person. You get that impression. Yet there are so many bad things that have happened. You have, number one, God allowing his people to experience a famine, and then you have his person Naomi experiencing so much tragedy in such a short space of time. And it's just a reminder that God allows bad things to happen. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you belong to him. He will let bad things happen to you and around you. And it's just a matter of us learning to cope and trusting him anyway. Yeah. But we also see good things happening in this chapter. You have the famine ending, and you have Naomi experiencing this loyalty and devotion from her daughter-in-law, and that I'm sure must have been touching. So you have that the rain on the good and the bad that's coming through.
Yeah, my points were exactly the same. Sometimes God allows bad things to happen to his people collectively as well as individually. But then I was tying things together. I was like, but like we learned in Esther, these bad things that he allows are never the end of the story. And I think that was I came to that conclusion because this is chapter 1.
Yeah. It's just the beginning.
This is just the beginning. There's a long way to go. In terms of like life application, I'm a very dependent person. Like very, very dependent. Like I think in almost every aspect where somebody could be dependent, I am a dependent person. But I think looking at how independent Naomi was, even in the midst of like what could have been her lowest moments, I think going forward, I need to maybe find little things, little ways to I don't think I necessarily want to necessarily be an independent individual. I think I'm always gonna be a dependent. I'm always gonna be a baby, even when I'm not the baby of the family. But I think part of her independence came from a dependence on God. Yeah. And so I think I need to find a way to shift a lot of my dependence from the people around me onto God so that I can I can have some of Naomi's independence. Mm-hmm. I think that's cool. I think also in relation to Naomi is that I want to build the type of relationships that Naomi had, where I have this type of connection with people that they would be willing to move to a whole other country.
That reminds me. I think we had this conversation earlier. I was telling you about a TikTok I saw where this woman, she was saying that she was married to a pastor, and she personally has something against what do you call it, number-based goals. So like when they give pastors, we want you to baptize this many people by this point in time, because she was saying she has a problem with evangelism that has an agenda. And like I was agreeing somewhat, but then I came to the point where I disagreed to the whole thing. She was saying that anytime you approach somebody with the intention to, oh, I'm going to invite them to church, do you approach them to develop a relationship with them, like, oh, I will do this nice thing for them and then I'll ask them to come to church. She's saying you have an agenda, and love, our evangelism, our reaching out is supposed to be about love, because that was Jesus's method, and love doesn't have an agenda. But like I appreciate that. I appreciate the concept of not just trying to convert people, but I think that that's what I was telling you as well. If I love somebody, I will want them to experience the grace and the mercy and the hope of eternity that Jesus can bring. And so, of course, I will want them to meet Jesus. Of course, I will want to introduce them to Jesus. But I don't know that that's always the same thing as inviting them to church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
I could be inviting them to listen to Watch Out. But I think you said she said that she doesn't think evangelism should have an agenda, and I was like, what? Evangelism is one massive agenda.
Yeah.
Like, it's not evangelism if there's no agenda. What is it if it's not an agenda? Anyway, okay.
But I saw that in Naomi and Ruth's relationship, the fact that this woman has been so good to her that she has no problem accepting her religious beliefs. Mm-hmm. And I think if those were the relationships we were building, if non-Christians and the people around us had that kind of experience with us, I don't even think inviting them to church would be an issue. Mm-hmm. They'd be, when you going? I come in. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, where you going?
Yeah. So I think that kindness, compassion, those are where it's at.
Love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I spoke about Naomi's relationship, but she had 2 daughters-in-law. Mm-hmm. And I don't think she would have shown preference to one or the other. Mm-hmm. But one chose to go.
That was one of the takeaways I had. I was thinking, like, a lot of the time I read the story, I'm like, look at Oprah. She has no loyalty. She's not like Ruth. Be more like Ruth. But this time around, I'm like, we all have our own path. And Ruth's path was to follow Naomi and have her story take place in did they go to Bethlehem?
Yeah, Bethlehem.
Right. And Orpah's story was not. Orpah's story was back at home
in Moab.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know what became of her. We don't know whose life she impacted there. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to note that we don't all have the same path. Mm-hmm. And just because I think this is the direction I'm supposed to go in, or somebody else is this is the direction somebody else is going in, doesn't mean that either of us are wrong. Mm-hmm. to do so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. But I think I was saying that because I think, not that I think Ruth was more loyal or brave than Orpah, but I think I admire mm-hmm. her loyalty and her devotion to her mother-in-law. And I think I would like to develop a flip side of Naomi having those types of relationships. I would like to develop relationships with people where I feel not necessarily that level of loyalty and devotion. Because I don't necessarily want to be the one traveling across country with people. Like, you can come across country with me. But I think a big part of life is supposed to be about relationships. Mm-hmm. And because of my personality type, I can't necessarily deal with a large number of relationships, right? That gonna drive me mad. Mm-hmm. But I think I need to be deliberate about developing quality relationships. So I think that's relationships with where I am like Naomi, and relationships where I'm also like Ruth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Give and take.
Yes, definitely. My last point is I literally asked myself, who am I willing to move, and who am I willing to follow?
Mm. Yeah. Oh, you you're being deep, sis. You're being deep.
And like, I don't know that I feel the way Ruth feels about anybody other than my immediate family, right? Like, I feel at home, you know. I don't, and we plan.
But I think it's also important to note, right, that she was no longer living with her parents. She's been living with Naomi, right? So I think that plays into a role, into a factor, because I think where it comes to the point, like, had after Marlon or Killian or whichever one she was married to died, had she gone back to her parents' house, I don't think we would have been in this situation. I think it was important, like you said at the beginning, that where Naomi was home.
So, I want to get to the point where home is God.
Okay.
Yeah. So wherever He's leading, wherever my relationship with Him is strongest, that is where I'm comfortable. That is where I want to remain. And He's the person I move with. Whether He's going back home, He's going to Moab, wherever He's going.
I feel good. Out here being deep.
Yeah. So this was like, I read this chapter the first time and I was like, I don't know if you're going to be able to.
But the same thing happened when we did Esther 1. Yeah. So we just had to, you have to sit with it, give it time, give the Holy Spirit time.
This was a pleasant experience.
So I think that's it for Ruth chapter 1.
Yes. So chapter 2 next time. We welcome your suggestions for what to do next, because this will be over in the blink of an eye.
Yeah. Just 4 chapters.
So this has been What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm TJ.
And I'm MJ.
And until next time, we're out.